Christmas in the Shadows. By K.R.M. Morgan. It was a cold December evening in London, the city dressed in twinkling lights and the air heavy with the scent of mulled wine. As I gazed out from my office window at the bustling streets below, I felt the familiar buzz of urgency swirl in my gut, a sensation that had grown all too frequent in my role as head of the British Secret Intelligence Service. Just as I sipped my Blue Mountain coffee from its Stewart's Antiquarian's mug, my intercom buzzed, shattering the festive atmosphere. It was my most trusted analyst, Jacob. I gestured through the glass door of my office for him to come in. He looked worried or, given the dire state of the world, even more worried than usual. "Cynthia, we've intercepted communications suggesting a plot by the Russian GRU's Unit 29155. They aim to take down our entire power grid on Christmas Day," he said, his voice tight with concern. I straightened in my chair, my elegant business suit swishing softly as I moved. The GRU was one of our primary opponents in the perpetual great game of espionage. Standing for Main Directorate of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, Unit 29155 was Russia's dirty cyber tricks department responsible for actions intended to destabilize nations. Recent cyber attacks on the British Library, the National Health Service, and our atomic weapon systems attested to their abilities and the apparent incompetence of our domestic counteragencies, MI5 and GCHQ. "What exactly do they plan to do?" I asked. "Complete sabotage. Power, internet, cellular networks, everything. They want to cripple our ability to celebrate, leaving families in the dark, literally and metaphorically." Knowing the significance, both strategically and symbolically, I frowned. This wasn't just about Christmas dinner, it was about unity and resilience. What about MI5? This was a domestic threat and strictly speaking, they should deal with it. Christmas party. They're all, Jacob paused, not sure how to say it. Well, let's just say they're not in any shape to help. Ah, of course. The civil service's multi-million-pound entertainment budget was world-renowned. I paused. What about the Ministry of Defense? Jacob laughed. Recent cuts mean they only open every other Wednesday. That ruled out using the Special Air Service. They were probably all working from home anyway, I reflected. Downing Street? I asked, remembering how often I had been reprimanded for using MI6 resources on UK soil. They have all been sucked into a massive fiscal black hole. In response to this development, I looked out of my window and noticed a rapidly rotating black mass now visible over that area of Westminster. Great. Just great. I'll handle it, Jacob. Get my car. I threw Jacob my car keys while I searched my desk drawer for my trusty Beretta Nano and my favorite Can-Can concealment holster, which allowed me to put the weapon in a place that few people ever suspected. I wasn't meant to be out in the field, but when the nation's safety hung in the balance and Christmas cheer lay in jeopardy, my elegance transformed into resolve. I transitioned from the head of the service to the field agent I'd trained to be. A rendezvous with the GRU. The icy streets of London seemed sharper in the dark. I navigated my beloved 911 expertly through the narrow lanes, finally stopping in front of a nondescript warehouse that appeared as dreary as it sounded. Jacob's intel had led me here. Within these walls, Russian operatives were plotting their nasty scheme. As I stepped out, the chill sharp in the air, I sought out my hidden capabilities. Sneaking around in the shadows wasn't something I often did, but adrenaline twisted with urgency inspired confidence. I slipped inside, using the darkness to duck between crates. My heart raced, not out of fear, but anticipation. The thrill of averting disaster coursed through me. Voices drifted from the back, harsh and guttural. I sidled closer, peering around a crate. The room was filled with men hunched over a makeshift table, blueprints spread out before them, illustrations designed to disable London's power grid during peak demand. Several rugged mil-spec laptops were open beside the plans. My pulse quickened as I recognized the lead operative, a man whose picture I had memorized from a file, Colonel Yuri Koslov, notorious for his ruthlessness and cunning. I assessed the situation and concluded that brute force wouldn't be my ally here. I reached into my purse, pulling out a smartphone rigged with a powerful signal disruptor. It was my trump card. I pressed a combination of buttons, activating the device. A high-pitched whir pierced the air, and every screen flickered. The men scrambled, shock painting their faces, exactly the diversion I needed. With expert precision, I crept forward, quickly snatching the blueprints and shoving them into my jacket. Just as I was about to make my escape, Koslov turned, meeting my gaze with disbelief. "Who are you?" he barked. I stood tall, my confidence shining through the fear welling at my core. "Your unfortunate end. Christmas is not a time for destruction, Koslov. And I intend to make sure it remains that way." What followed took mere seconds, but it felt like a symphony in slow motion. As Koslov lunged for a weapon, I threw a fist, redirecting my weight into a clean jab that knocked him back into his companions. Chaos erupted, and I didn't hesitate. I sprinted for the exit, heart pounding. Escape and evasion. As I escaped into the brisk night air, I activated my signal disruptor again. Instantly, I began to sever their communications. Just as sirens wailed in the distance, signaling MI5 had finally sobered up and listened to Jacob's intelligence. Once they arrived, I handed them the plans, before I slipped away from the scene, leaving MI5 to take the credit, as usual. Through the shadows of London, I made my way back to my office, where the Christmas lights twinkled on the tree I had ignored in my rush. The world outside was still filled with joyous sounds of celebration. I didn't think of accolades or praise. Instead, my mind turned to Sir Tavish Stewart, off on some distant adventure. Perhaps it was time he returned, not just for Christmas but to witness the resilient spirit of ordinary folks starting the holidays aflame with hope and joy. This season wasn't merely saved, it blossomed because hard work, cleverness, and yes, perhaps a touch of elegant tenacity could shine even in the darkest of times. As I sipped the now cold remnants of my Blue Mountain coffee, I couldn't help but smile. Dame Cynthia Sinclair is a character in the Tavish Stewart adventures, available on Amazon and all good bookshops.